Welcome to Jonbenét Ramsey Sketchy Details Part 18. If you have not watched Parts 1 through 17, it's advised that you do because these are in chronological order. This video, along with every video in the Jonbenét Ramsey Sketchy Details series, are intended for educational purposes only and are not intended for children at all. So now we're still on number 75, and we're talking about the Patricia Papers. So on May 6th of 1999, Cheesy asks the Ramsey sender, if Patsy gets arrested, will I still be able to communicate with you? That will not happen. We must put our trust in God, is the Ramsey sender's reply. Two things that I want to point out about this. The first one being that Cheesy first says, if Patsy gets arrested, and then she says, will I still be able to communicate with you? That is her almost sort of testing the Ramsey sender so she could still verify whether or not she thinks it's Patsy or Jameson. Second thing is that the Ramsey sender says that will not happen. We must put our trust in God. To me, that means no, you won't be able to talk to me if Patsy gets arrested. And therefore, this for me is another big clue that yes, this is Patsy Ramsey sending these emails. And then here I am going to just show you where this Ramsey sender explains briefly how their messages are encrypted, decrypted, routed, and then rerouted through different servers. And that exchange happened on May 11th. So I was having a hard time locating the exact email where the Ramsey sender first brings up this mystery man of theirs. But it appears that the Ramsey sender brings him up at the same time or around the same time that they start explaining their theory on who they think killed Jonbenét. However, I do know that this mystery man was being discussed by August 28th of 1999, where the Ramsey sender states, I have been speaking to a man for almost a year who is either my daughter's killer or the best thing that has ever happened to the two of us. He offers information that surpasses everything I have seen to date. He confirms his closeness to Jonbenét, both living and in the present. My hands are tied by my attorneys and family. I am not allowed to speak in any depth to the press at this time. That is the only reason I have and will continue to be elusive. I must look out for the better interest of my family. As confusing as this sounds, almost a year ago, the man I speak of has contacted my family, the police, my attorneys, and Alex Hunter. His words have been silenced for some reason unknown by me. He gained access to me, and I have never, nor will I ever, lose contact with him. In a separate email, the Ramsey sender goes along to say, I really have no problem with him feeling the way he does about her, if I can be assured that he is not her killer. During the summer, he told me that he visited Jonbenét. He shared that during his visit, he cleaned all the debris from her tombstone and off the marble covering over her grave. I sense his meticulousness as he mentions the existence of ants crawling across her grave and how he swept them away. He shared that he sang her a song. I know the title of that song. He said he cried and told her how special she was. He always mentions that he tells Jonbenét he loves her. I have no doubt in my mind that he has anything but love in his heart for her. I admit that his honorable acts towards my daughter touch my heart. I also ask why. My daughter was murdered and now visits this valiant prince. He speaks words of comfort and support to me. He defends me and offers his protection over me. It is difficult to betray him to any extent. On the other hand, my love for my child yields an unbelievable devotion to her, superseding any bond I may share with this man. So the Ramsey sender clearly has a lot of sympathy and empathy for this mystery man. She even calls him her valiant prince at one point, even confesses that she cannot and will not ever betray this mystery man of hers. And on September 9th, the Ramsey sender continues on talking about this mystery man, saying, I will try to convey some of the specific things this man has said about Jonbenét. You would think you were reading a letter from a man to his young lover, if you were not aware that it is the words of this man for my daughter. In the beginning, I could barely find it in myself to listen to him at all. Can you imagine what it would be like to have a man you do not know speak of your deceased child in such romantic terms? I have come to realize, however, that I must listen to him. He might either be the killer or has great insight into who the killer might be. He has contacted me via mail. I have conversed with him in this arena and more. I have done everything short of meeting him face to face. And on June 12th, the Ramsey Center says something very strange. They say, strangely, the Ramsey address was in existence before I was ever even aware of it. I will explain that later. And she's referring to the ramsey.net email address. So far, I have not found where she explains this. In a separate email, the Ramsey sender says, I have a secret. Hence, I do not want anyone in my family to know what I am doing. Why? They would ask me to stop. Also, the investigators would take over and do things their way. I do not want that. That might be hard to understand, but it is the truth. Let me ask you, have you ever had a secret? One that might prove dangerous to yourself or your family? You have to understand what it's like to be surrounded by people who take matters into their own hands, namely my investigators, my attorneys, and even my family. I will continue to keep this secret until I can figure out a way to make this happen the way it should. My investigators, attorneys, and even my family do not know this man like I do. I thought that was super interesting because it shows that the Ramsey sender, if in fact really is Patricia, that they were doing this on their own, that this was their own little hunch that they were acting on, and that they were trying to research this on their own because they knew that her husband, her investigators, the attorneys would all tell her to stop doing this. A, she could incriminate herself, and B, they didn't want this to be found. I think she's referring to this child porn industry in this. She's aware of it, and she's trying to lightly tell about it. Now, this email of theirs also makes me think that she's talking about this child porn industry and that she knows about it because of what she's saying. It starts with Cheesy asking, so I take it that this darkness, whatever it is something that is part of this case but is being kept silent for some reason. I just wish I understood what darkness means. The man who helps you, he knows what darkness has to do with this case? To which the Ramsey sender replies, darkness is death and wickedness. Darkness can be harmless, yet one cannot see the danger that might lurk in the shadows. And to me, the Ramsey sender's reply is kind of interesting because to me it could be interpreted as like, so darkness can also be harmless, yet one cannot see the danger that might lurk in the shadows. This to me could be interpreted as like, if she agreed to let Jonbenét be photographed in an adult way and be involved in this adult content, maybe she did think that it was harmless because it was just pictures, but she didn't understand that it could be taken to a whole different level to where she could die. That's just an opinion, of course. And now in this email message, she's just explaining how the method used to kill Jonbenét was something that only a professional would know about, and that Burke was too young, and that her and John did not know about this type of torture. But what I want to bring to our attention the most is at the end it says, and unfortunately for my little girl, it lasted for hours. How does she know that this lasted for hours unless, like the poem says, there were more physical signs on Jonbenét of what happened, and maybe that's how they know, or they know because they knew about the event of what happened. So I just think that that's kind of trippy because nowhere in the investigation or the autopsy or anything does it say that something lasted for hours. But yet this in the poem makes you think maybe that's what she's referencing, that's what she means. So I have a quick update already. I did find where she explains the email address, and she said that her mysterious friend is the originator of the ramsey.net email address. So that's even trippier. Like, so this Ramsey sender, who I'm pretty sure is Patricia, is claiming that their mystery friend, who they've been talking to for over a year, behind everyone's back, is who made this Ramsey.net email address, and that he gave Patsy permission to use it to be able to communicate with her and other people on the internet. So that is really, really weird. Now, as stated in part 16, I'm going to bring up Carol McKinley, who is actually a Fox News journalist and or reporter. At one point, this Ramsey sender was communicating via email with Carol McKinley and had told Carol McKinley their theory, their full theory, supposedly. And I guess at one point Carol decided, nah, I'm not going to do anything with this because you can't tell me specifically that you are Patricia Ramsey. So now if you see in some of these email exchanges the name Carol, you know that it's talking about Carol McKinley from Fox News. And on June 30th of 1999, the Ramsey sender sent from a different email address to Cheesy. For unknown reasons, the nymalias.net server is unavailable. I know your mail has been rejected over the past 12 hours or more. This letter is to assure you that I am fine. Do not attempt to respond to this mail. It will not reach me. A new server must be secured before any further mail can be received by me. Every effort is being made to this setup as soon as possible. My sources are diligently working on this. I have no idea why the alias.net server went down overnight. I am very suspicious. I am sorry I cannot get your messages until this problem is solved. And on November 11th, the Ramsey sender sends a lengthy email, and in the middle it says, "It is with heavy heart that I come to you with the following unfortunate news. I must leave you now. For security reasons, the Ramsey nymalias.net address will continue to exist to avoid sabotage through possible takeovers of the account. However, I will not have access to the account after tonight. Therefore, if you send messages to the Ramsey address, you will not be sending mail to me. Please be assured that I am in no present danger." And then towards the end of that email, they say, "I thank you for listening to me. I am richer for knowing you in this short amount of time. I will assure you that my husband, our investigators, and our attorneys will do everything possible to make sure justice is served. I hope to soon to talk to the authorities personally. Until then, the above-mentioned people will pursue truth and justice." That's kind of weird to me. It seems to me like she got caught by either the attorneys, the investigators, or her husband. This would be what was deemed the Dear John letter of the Ramsey senders to Cheesy. This was the very last email that Cheesy ever received, and despite Cheesy responding 3 more times after this email, she never ever again heard from the Ramsey sender. So then now we're going to move on to Gail's email exchange, or G squared emails exchanges. I went through Cheesy's first, because that was the first one to contact the Ramsey email sender, and also that one has the most emails available, and they kind of, in my opinion, got the closest, the Ramsey sender and Cheesy, in the way they communicated, and they discussed a lot more, in my opinion. Like I said, I do not have access to all of the emails, so I'm sure there's probably more, but just so far, Cheesy seems to have been the one that communicated with them the most. And this email here is just to kind of show you guys the different dynamics between Gail's emails and Cheesy's emails with the Ramsey sender. At one point, Gail said, "Hey, the jig is up. I know who molested Burke, blah, blah, blah." And obviously that offended the Ramsey sender. And here the Ramsey sender is just saying that they're reluctant to communicate with Gail. In this next email to Gail, the Ramsey sender says, "Yes, this man has been close to my family. Do not let me confuse you. He is still elusive to them all. He knows them, though they do not know him. That is not to say that they have not heard of him or from him. He speaks of my parents. I do not fear that he will harm them. Actually, he would kill to protect any of us. He is very loyal to me and to anyone who was close to my child. He is very charismatic, as he describes events in his life that indicate it. He is surrounded by people. It is part of his profession. I have not decided what his profession is at this point. It sounds as if he might be in some sort of public service." And then a bit further in this same email, the Ramsey sender says, "I do not feel he's anyone on the suspect list. I did make a deal with the devil for an empty IOU. I was not referring to my mysterious contact." So if the Ramsey sender is not talking about making a deal with the devil being her mystery man, then what the frick is she talking about? Like, what deal did she make with whom that she feels was a deal with the devil? And on August 19th, They say, I have absolutely no desire to waste time with this is she or isn't she stuff. Why won't someone listen to me about a possible killer? To me, that sounds like someone who's very stressed out, that no one is listening to them or taking them seriously. And then jumping back a bit, on July 28th, the Ramsey sender says, the killer is not famous, yet is. He is charismatic. He is surrounded by people. He has a way with little girls like Jonbenét. Have you ever met a person who draws people close to him like a magnet? That is the true meaning of the word charisma. He is kind and gentle, patient and loving, but he has a dark side. He is a Bundy, loved by his fiancée and her daughter by day, converting into a bloodthirsty killer by night. His preferences are precise. Little girls exactly like Jonbenét. To him, Jonbenét was a goddess. That last disturbing comment is a quote. I have to carry the horrible truths that are doomed to be unheard for eternity. Thank you for understanding and patience. I do not talk about this to many. I hold a secret, one I must reveal, but how? And on September 16th, they say, I told you in the beginning that I might panic if put on the spot as to my involvement with this man. I may fail to acknowledge any connection with this endeavor if directly asked by you or anyone else involved. That in no way means I am not who I say I am here because I deny it in person. And then a little further down, it says, I will never yield to a question posed to me via the phone or in person prior to the publication of my letter. And on November 29th, Gail, or G Squared, got a reply after trying to reach the Ramsey sender for several days. This reply, however, was not from the original Ramsey sender. This reply simply read, I will deliver your message of concern to Patricia the very next time I speak to her, and then had this Bible verse in it. Now, that's a very, very summarized edition of G Squared emails. I figured I wouldn't do G squareds as long as I did cheesies. So that's all there is for G squared, but I know that I brought up Mamie or Mame, aka Mary, in part 16. So this is her little connection to this saga, if you will. She's the one that I said ended up saying that they weren't going to share their Patricia letters after all. So Mamie or Mary took to the chat forums that they were all conversing on and said, well, the Patricia letters are a real personal issue with me. You may have heard that I had several weak communications with Patricia myself. I have stayed very low-key about this, fortunately. Those who know of my involvement have honored my wishes to keep it quiet. The correspondence I had with Patricia is very emotional for me. The letters became very personal, at times scary, bordering on criminal. I tried to get help from authorities when it came clear that a criminal act could be a possibility. No one cared to help. And then in part 16, I also brought up a email recipient known as Collins, or a pen name of 2+2. Now, originally, Collins had posted all of their Patricia Ramsey email exchanges on the forum for everyone to see. But then for some reason, he ended up deleting every single one of them. So now all I have access to is his little brief summary where he describes his encounter with this Ramsey sender. And he starts it with, I have visited the site findagrave.com and have exchanged some mail with these people. My impression is I had or have encountered 3 separate and distinct interlocutors at that site, none of whose writing, in my humble opinion, or according to my writer ID software, resembled my Patricia to any appreciable extent. I didn't hook up with her on the Find a Grave site. I cannot say for certain that others have not. If it is true that they have been corresponding with someone at that site who has mentioned me as a correspondent, one has to wonder whether she is my mystery writer as well. It may interest you to know that I have been known to write poetry and composed some tributary poems and other works commemorating Jonbenét. These I sent one at a time to Patricia. She told me she loved the poetry. She thought me a gifted writer. Now, the very last email that any of these recipients received from the Ramsey sender was on November 11th, and it was this deemed Dear John letter, except for Collins, except for 2+2. He states that he gave the Patsy sender, or the Ramsey sender, a Dear John letter because they were tired of their flip-floppy, confusing bullshit. But the last time anybody ever heard from them was on November 11th. Now, one thing I want to point out about that is the fact that these emails just kind of stopped after the grand jury came to their decision. Or, better yet, after Alex Hunter denied the grand jury's decision, all of a sudden these emails stopped. The overall context of these emails and certain phrases used by the Ramsey sender, such phrases like my daughter, this family, and I'm Jonbenet's mother, certainly make me think that and kind of show that. And if you notice, in the beginning of any of the emails, the Ramsey sender was not claiming that. They did not claim to be her mother, they didn't claim to be a family member, and they sure as hell didn't sign off as Patricia. This is something that was almost sort of kind of earned by the recipients. So clearly the Ramsey sender was looking for a safe outlet to be able to discuss this secret of theirs, and a way to ease the weight of said secret off of their shoulders. Also, to feel connected to people, or to build a bond with people whom believed her and her story. It was said that Patsy hated if and when people were mad at her, that was sort of a trait of hers. And to me, that trait really bleeds through in these emails. That trait to me shows either a great degree of insecurities and or a strong desire to control their public image and the way that people see them, to control the way that people see them, the type of person that people see them as. This whole Patricia Papers phenomenon leaves me with three impressions. So there's three different possibilities here. We're going to go through those. The first possibility is it's not Patricia, it's somebody else. The other two possibilities are both, yes, they're Patricia, but one is that she's telling the truth, and the other one is that she's lying. So let's look at the first scenario, that it's not Patricia. That would mean that this is some obsessor. It could be her sister, it could be the real killer, it could be nobody. It could be John Mark Carr, for all we know, but it's not Patricia. That would also mean that there is no mystery man, because everything in the emails is fake. If it's not Patricia, if it's just some random person, then they're making all of this up. So there's no mystery man, there's no truth to be told, and it's all fake. Now, the second scenario, where it is Patricia and she is telling the truth, that would mean that, yes, there is a mystery man. What's in the emails is the truth, at least as far as Patricia saw it. If this was really happening to her, of course she's going to believe it. Doesn't mean that it was the truth. If the mystery man is real, doesn't mean that the mystery man was telling her the truth, but she believed it to be the truth. And it says that she did have a truth or a secret that she did want to expose, that she would have said it, in front of people eventually, and that she would and did play dumb in front of her family and attorneys and in person when asked about these letters. And the third scenario being that it is Patsy, but she is lying. If it's that, there is a lot more to that. So if it is Patricia, but she's lying, to me that means that there is no secret and there is no truth that she was going to come forward and tell. That to me would also mean that this was all for attention and selfish, self-preserving reasons. Also tells me that obviously there is no mystery man. So there's no email hacker, wise guy, ninja killer, charismatic child killer, valiant prince. Okay, that's all super fake. That would also mean that the mystery man is her guilty side. And that this was all done before the grand jury because she was nervous about the grand jury. And it was kind of to maybe get people to believe her story and give her story a little bit more credibility, just in case the grand jury did see her as guilty, which they did, but just in case Alex Hunter went along with that, because these stopped right after the grand jury convened. Now, I think the last thing that I want to talk to you guys about are two things that I found very strange about the whole Collins 2+2 email recipient. So, if you may remember from the part 16, in one of the emails that Cheesy sent to Jameson, at the end, she signed it 2+2 equals you, Jameson. And Collins just so happens to have a pen name 2+2. That makes me think that Collins was Jameson, because Jameson never talked to the Patricia Ramsey sender, the Ramsey sender of the emails. And like I said, that drove her crazy. So maybe she pretended to be a male so she could communicate with the Patricia sender. Secondly is, he says, it may interest you to know that I often write poetry, some of which Jonbenét was the subject of. The Ramsey sender said that the killer, quote-unquote, mystery friend wrote poems about Jonbenét that she liked, and she told him that she liked them. Collins said that he had sent these poems to Patricia one by one, and that she told him she thought him a gifted writer. That is really super sketchy. I don't know what to take from that. Because that kind of gives off the impression that Collins was this mystery man of Patricia's. But at the same time, if it is Jameson pretending to be Collins, then that's just information that Jameson had got from one of the other recipients, and she was using that against Cheesy and against the other recipients to confuse them. Like I said, Jameson has done shit like this before in the past, and I think I read somewhere that Jameson is on strong mental medications and something about disassociativeness. So, kind of makes sense. I also want to add that if this is Patricia, and if she was telling the truth, then I think this mystery man of hers was John Mark Carr. If you may remember, John Mark Carr claimed that he had spoke to Patsy before. I don't think he did. This could have been what he meant, that he was talking to Patsy. Doesn't mean that Patsy knew who he was. But then also, if you go to John Mark Carr's website, he talks in a very similar way to the way that this Ramsey sender was saying their mystery man talks. But at the same time, this Ramsey sender also talks the same way. So this is just a huge phenomenon that I found very, very strange and interesting. And honestly, I come out the other end not really knowing what I believe. I do believe that this is Patricia. The Ramsey sender is Patricia. I don't think that it was just some nobody. But I don't know if I think she was telling the truth or if Patricia was trying to save her own ass. And this was all a guilt trip. Like, a trip she was going on because she felt guilty because the grand jury was coming close to convening. So, that's what I think about the Patricia Papers. That's the end of the Patricia Papers. That is also the end of part 18. So please like, subscribe, and share, and thank you for watching, and as always, God bless. Evil on this scale is impossible to comprehend. To know who murdered Jonbenét Ramsey would be to know what world we live in, where we are.